Welcome to the social media spiral, balancing engagement and mental wellness at work. So my name is Katrina German, and we can go to the next slide, please, Vita. And I am going to be your host today. I'm the CEO of Ethical Digital, and I'll explain a little bit more about myself and Ethical Digital in the moment. But I'm also joined by Rebecca Rackow. So we've been having a lot of fun with me trying to make that work. Rebecca Rackow, she is from the Canadian Mental Health Association. So I will be introducing her in a moment as well. And but first, let's just take a quick moment to talk about what we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, I'll introduce Rebecca and myself, as well as some of the other members of the team who are here today. Also, just doing a quick check-in. I think whenever you're learning something, it's a good idea to balance it against your own experiences to help so it really, it sinks into the mind. So we're going to do some talking about why do we use social media, and I welcome you to be thinking about yourself and your own social media usage as we're going through those pieces. But then, let's take a few, kind of flip it over in that we know that, you're using social media for a lot of positive things, but are there things that it is affecting in your life that could be, causing some issues for your mental wellness? So is your social media affecting your sleep? Is your social media affecting your overall efficiency? And, the idea around loneliness, anxiety, and depression, there's a lot of research that's been done around these particular pieces. So we'll be bringing in a few of those research pieces as well. What we can do about it, there's just some high level, simple things that we can be doing to take care of ourselves. A lot of posting on social media to take care of others. And also, just some general best practices. And then the exciting part is that Rebecca is going to be sharing with us some of the things that the Canadian Mental Health Association is doing to create safe spaces online. And so this is going to be a really valuable, fun-packed hour. It will be presentation, but we are welcoming you to be putting in any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll be answering them. And we're hoping to leave at least about 15 minutes at the end for open questions. This type of conversation does tend to spark a lot of questions from people. And so we'd like to welcome you to let's have those conversations. So please put your comments in the chat. If there's something that you're like, oh, this is really pressing, I welcome you to raise your hand, and we'll try to answer at that point. So in the meantime, without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm Katrina German. I am the founder and CEO of Ethical Digital. We're a Canadian company. We have 15 people across Canada, and we have a lot of things that we focus on. So I'll talk a little bit more about Ethical Digital in a moment, but our main goal is to change the trajectory of the internet. So just a nice small goal. But in the meantime, we really think that we're the first generation of people on the internet, and there's so many generations ahead of us. So what type of a legacy, what type of a foundation do we want to be creating for the internet? And part of that is about inclusion. Part of that is ensuring that the things and the products we're creating are actually good for human beings and our well-being. And, just really the idea that if we're influencing the internet, which is something that we can all be, kind of connecting and working with those systems, that's actually going to have a reflection in reality too. So there's, a chance to really make some change if we're focusing on the internet space. I'd like to formally welcome Rebecca Rackow. She is the Director of Advocacy, Research, and Public Policy Development at the Canadian Mental Health Association. I have a wider description here. So in the meantime, she is based in in Regina, and she has over 20 years of frontline. Oh, we have somebody online. So if I could just get one of the moderators to.
Everybody. Katrina got muted.
Sorry, yeah. I got muted too. Yeah, we muted everybody. Okay, let's come back to this. So Rebecca has over 20 years of frontline experience with seniors, at-risk youth, children, and families. She's been involved in creating the caregiver-affected recovery
Sorry, Katrina got muted again.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Rebecca also takes calls from people looking for help. She has spoken and presented to audiences both locally and nationally regarding a number of mental health issues and advocates for accessible mental health services for all. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today. I can't wait for you to get to hear some of the really neat things that are happening from the Mental Health Association to create these safe spaces that can be directly applied to your workplace, to your internal communications, how you're talking to people on Slack and on Teams, that sort of thing, as well as anything that you're doing from your company around your social media, that sort of thing. Let's create some safe spaces for people out there. So in the meantime, on to the next slide, please. Just want to do a little bit of moment just telling you where this is coming from the ethical digital perspective. So as I mentioned, our goal is to change the trajectory of the internet. And so again, we really think this is important to really be conscious about how we are taking care of human beings as the internet is evolving. So we're a social impact organization. In fact, we're a certified B Corporation. So as part of that, we recognize this idea of theory of change. We think there's a lot of things that we need to do to approach this plan in order to actually have some true effect and change. So one of the very first thing that we focus on is on our fact-based research. And so we actually work with universities around North America to be creating and finding this research and putting it into areas that are important and directly related to the internet. So we have several things underway right now, how to get more women in venture capital, how to get more Indigenous women involved in technology. But the big part, and this is from research that we did a couple of years ago, is that we're sharing with you today is around our social media and well-being and how it's actually impacting you. From there, we turn it into education, such as groups like this. We also offer keynotes, workshops, and we have an online training, which if you stay till the end, we even have a little discount for you if you're interested in going through further training or for your team to go through that education and speaking and training. Then we ask for some commitments. So we're right in the middle of creating a community of online marketers who are all committed to doing things a little bit more ethically. And I think all of us who are on the front lines really have this deep interest in trying to make the internet a better place, and we see some of the risks firsthand. So we're creating that group. So if you have any interest in joining that, please do reach out to us. We're also in the process, and we won't have this ready yet, but do sign up for our newsletter. But we are creating a technology tool that I believe will change the trajectory of the internet, but we'll be announcing that later this year. But the big thing that we also do is action. And so we work with other marketing companies. We directly work with other companies. We train companies on how to create ethical and inclusive content for your online space. So again, we can be really thinking about how to make sure that people are being taken care of, particularly with their mental health, and also just all having the same opportunities to be able to create for the internet in the technology space and social media space. All right, so let's get into the meat. This is what you're all here for, and I'm very, very excited to be sharing with you. So in 1983, the internet was born. And it has had amazing, it's just totally revolutionized the way that every person in North America, whether they're on social media or not, engages with the world. And so it's been an incredibly influential space, and a lot of really good things have come out of it. There's been a lot of people who connections that have been made, people who are, making friendships, raising money, connecting with people around the world who are like-minded. There's a lot of really great things that are happening. Next slide, please. But there's also a few other things. Oh, sorry, and like this other thing here too, it's also allowed people to connect on a different level and actually start full movements and on a scale that has not been seen before in history. And so in the meantime, there's been a lot of healthy things that have come out too, where people are able to show and experience things alongside other people, even if they're not in their immediate geography. Next slide, please. But there's also, of course, a lot of downfalls to the internet as well. And I think everybody's here because we're starting to see that the internet has been, and social media particularly, has been really a double-edged sword. We have, elections that are being talked about being, fooled around with. We've got all sorts of personal issues that are happening where people being, there's all sorts of self-harm news, that sort of thing coming out. And it is one of those things where we really want to be thinking about, there's a lot of good things happening on the internet, but there's also a lot of things that are directly affecting people and companies and organizations that we need to be paying attention to. And of course, trying to figure out how to offset some of these, negative effects and really start to really focus on the important good things that are coming out of it around connection and that sort of thing. So next slide, please. So this number is a little bit staggering when you think about it. And I know we hear these numbers all the time, you read them all the time, but there are 4.7 billion social media users around the world. And so I just want to be thinking about that. Like, that is a lot of people. And so there's a lot of opportunity, but that's also, if you look at this, we're spending an average of 2.5 hours a day on social media. And some places are much higher, some are much lower, and each individual is different. But in the meantime, this is something that, this is part of our lives. This is something that we are spending time on. So my goal out of this presentation today is really for you to also be thinking about yourself and how you're using social media and engaging with it, and how it's really impacting you personally, because it's there. And, this is a huge influence on the way that we're running our personal lives as well as our businesses. So next slide, please. So I'd like to just take a little analysis. I'm going to just rip through the next few slides here. But in the meantime, I'd love to just talk about why people are using social media. And so let's take this moment to really reflect on your own personal use and be like, yeah, that's me. No, it's not. Feel free to add something in the chat if you have extra comments around it or anything like that. No problem. But yeah, next slide, please. But yeah, 88% of individuals say they use social media for social interaction. So they want to be out there. And when social media first came out, I would say even Facebook, it really was a personal newsletter. It felt great to see what people were doing. I was chit-chatting with friends constantly. And so that's something that can be really a really powerful thing. Like, humans just really want connection. And so in the meantime, social media can do that. 80% of people are seeking information. So that makes sense. As businesses, we should be providing information. Go ahead. The good old pastime. 76% of participants in the study we're reciting here reporting using social media just to pass time. It's right there. Your phone's right there. You're bored. You got an hour to kill. That's what's happening. Fun and entertainment. 64% of users are actually like, hey, I'm coming in for fun and entertainment. And I will say, I love Pinterest on Saturday mornings. That is my entertainment. I really enjoy that. But it also falls into relaxation. So 60% of participants in the study, they said that social media actually helps them to de-stress and relax. And a lot of people actually want to just escape from the real world, so some people might even be, acting as different people online, whatever the case may be. Self-expression. So there's a percentage of people who actually like to share their content and that sort of thing with others. And so in this study, it was about 56% of people actually want to be like, hey, here's how I see the world. And then good old water cooler inspiration. So other people in the study also say that they're mentioning, they just want something to talk about. And I see this around my dinner table too, where my sons will be like, hey, did you see this meme? And it just becomes, just something that's a jumping off point for conversation. So it is something that, people are using just to find content to talk about. And good old convenience. Basically, it's just right there. If you want an answer, it's right there on your phone, on your laptop. And so a lot of people are also just using it because it's just so convenient to find information right now. And good old information sharing in terms of, we were talking about some people are going on there to get their information, but especially businesses and people who are trying to educate those out there, that a lot of people are using social media for information sharing as well. A lower amount than those who are consuming information. But again, this is something important to be thinking about, particularly from your business perspective, or if you do a lot of posting on your personal accounts. This one I thought was kind of funny. Surveillance and knowledge about others, but we do know that people are doing this, but 32% of respondents admitted to using social to spy on others. I wondered if they use different phrasing rather than spying, if that might be a little bit higher, because I know there's a lot of businesses who are checking on other people, that sort of thing. So now that we've kind of just ripped through those, those high level, just for a little bit of engagement here, if you could put into the chat box, what kind of platforms are you using at least once a week? Like, what are the main areas that you are focused on? And you don't have to share anything too personal, just something at a high level, but please feel free to pop this in the chat. And while we're doing this, I'm so excited. We actually have participants from around the world on this call. We've got several people from the UK, a few people from India, quite a few people from Canada, the US. So feel free let's have a global conversation about what you're using. And I love this. We're getting a lot of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, some Twitter, a lot of LinkedIn. There's the TikTok. Yeah, creativity on Instagram, Snapchat. Yes. And these are the main ones. These are the main areas. And a lot of people are using LinkedIn, particularly for work-related type conversations. Some people are just using these platforms to just talk to friends using the digital, the conversation chat features. Yes, all around the world love. I love that. And we got Mary Baker, who we're big fans of here. She's a big fan of Ethical Digital. We're a fan of her. So welcome, Mary. Okay. And we got Reddit too as another example. So yeah, there's quite a few people on Reddit too. And it's actually, I think it's even increasing in popularity over the last little while. So, all right, let's move on to the next slide, please. So we're going to just have a quick check-in. I wanted to start off with something a little bit lighter when we're talking about social media. But one of the big things, and this is something that came out of one of the studies that we found, is the idea around FOMO. Now, there's a lot of people, and it's the fear of missing out. This is actually a new term. It's only like about 6 or 7 years old. But in the meantime, it's the idea that you're just missing out on something, and it's really become quite almost a joking term. Oh, I got FOMO, that sort of thing. And a lot of people use this with the idea that I'm missing out. However, for people who suffer from anxiety, FOMO and posts that are dealing with FOMO can actually really kind of put them over the edge, even if it's not something they're even interested in. It can really contribute to having more of an anxious experience online. So I thought this was just some interesting statistics that people with household incomes around above 75,000 a year were most likely to experience FOMO. And another group that also is really highly affected by FOMO is millennials at 69% of them. And so a lot of, younger people who are, doing some comparison of themselves, consciously or unconsciously online, this can have a huge impact on them. So we actually at Ethical Digital like to use the term JOMO, not FOMO, which is the joy of missing out. And, the idea of, can we be leaning into this idea of not using FOMO in our posts, particularly if you're coming at it from a business, or if you're, looking at them from yourself personally and you do suffer from anxiety, recognizing that this is a technique that's being used for marketing, and it doesn't have to, impact you in the emotional way that it often does, can be really powerful. So here's just an example for those who are creating posts for others. And for those who want to recognize, FOMO, you can have just as an effective post without FOMO as, with. So here's just 2 examples that we've put together. Here's just the different just type of messaging. And, as marketers, we do know that FOMO works. It gets people, out, and people kind of panic and sign up. But for me, my recommendation for other marketers and those who are doing, creating any sort of content is, if you can, just stop using FOMO. Because it does have an impact on those who suffer from anxiety. So there's one of the first little takeaways. The next thing we wanted to talk about is, how does social media affecting your sleep? And we've all heard about how your phone has blue light, which can actually affect your melatonin production and that sort of thing, and trick your body into thinking that it's, light out rather than dark, and so that it should be awake. But there's also other ways that it's affecting your sleep as well. It's, just the very nature of having your phone nearby actually does impact the way that our brain works. And so next slide, please. And so in the meantime, when we're talking about things that you need to be doing to protect yourself and thinking about your employees, is the idea around sleep is really, really crucial to most mental wellness. It really does contribute to the way that we're feeling. So in the meantime, just be thinking about yourself and how you're actually going through and using your sleep, because basically they're saying that you should not be using electronic devices for at least 30 minutes before you go to sleep, because it will affect you. I even try to do it a little bit even longer than that, because I don't like losing any sleep. Sleep's valuable for me. They always say too, having good sleep hygiene is really important. So a good old bedtime routine. And some people are even saying just don't even have your phone in the bedroom at all. And I'll talk about another study in this next short while that will actually talk about how even having your phone nearby you affects the way your brain functions. So and the other side is moderation. Just be thinking about each individual is different, but try to be really firm with yourself and try to be very real as you're evaluating your sleep and how you're actually using your devices before you go to sleep, because it really can. And, especially if you're finding that you're having emotional reactions to the type of content that you're seeing, that's also something that can get your brain spinning and keeping you awake. So in the meantime, be very real with yourself and be thinking to yourself, how can I be encouraging better sleep so that I can have just more general wellness, and how is my social media use and computer use affecting this overall experience? Next slide, please. So this is also something that we like to talk about. It's sort of in our productivity area, but how is social media affecting our efficiency? And this can also really, connect in with your mental health and your mental well-being. If you're kind of behind and always feeling that you just don't have enough capacity. This is also rings very true for a lot of our employees. These are some of the things that we should be thinking about. So next slide, please. So this was quite interesting, diminishing memory capabilities. So they're actually, in one of the studies that we found, there's a difference between how people are thinking now than before, before the internet was a big component of it. How we used to think is really, we'd all be like, okay, I have some information, I'm going to get this information, I'm going to organize the information in my mind, and ideally be, potentially be able to teach it to somebody else in the future, or to actively use it. There's actually been a change in the way that we're remembering things now, in that we're actually remembering how to find the information on Google instead of what the actual information is and storing it in. So our actually memory capabilities are changing as we're using a lot of these tools. So recognizing this for yourself as well as for your team is going to be important, because, just understanding that, our social media use, our search use is actually changing the way that we're thinking. This is something just to be aware of and conscious of, so that as you're going forward and some of these other ideas that are coming forward, you can be implementing this idea as you're trying to, remember things in the future and plan your time, that are the way that we're thinking is changing right now. Next slide, please. And this was quite interesting. So just the presence of a smartphone. So me just having my phone right here, and probably most of you, some of you are probably even watching this on your smartphone. Just having it nearby changes also just how we're focused we are. So there was a study that was done with 3 different groups, and they were all asked to learn something. The first group was just given the information, asked to learn. Their smartphone was in a different space. The second group was given the information, and they have their phone right there. They were actually allowed to use their phone to try to find the answers. And the third group was given the question to study. They had to figure out the answers themselves, but their phone was just nearby them. And what they found was the first group, who had the phone nowhere near, actually did the best at actually remembering, retention of the information, being able to recite it, share it back to the group. Both the second 2 groups, even the group who wasn't using the phone, just having it there kind of fractures your attention. So you're not just focused in one area, you're actually focusing in several different areas at once, even though you're not conscious of it. So your phone is there. And my part of my brain, even though if I'm not conscious of it, is thinking about my phone being right there. And so in the meantime, this is something for us to be aware of, is that, if we're thinking about focus and really trying to move our lives forward for our mental wellness as well, that this is something that if you have something that you want to focus on and, try to really make happen in your life, just put the phone in the other room completely, because right now it's fracturing your attention. Next slide, please. And so some of the suggestions just around some of the efficiency pieces is actually taking that time, being very conscious that if you have something that you need to do and get done, have uninterrupted work time. So actually focus on it. And there's this idea, I like to share it, but it's this idea of Pomodoros. And it's the idea that if you can focus for 25 minutes, and there's all sorts of apps that will give you this, where you focus for 25 minutes, which is apparently supposed to be the time that most humans can really focus. And then take 5 or 10 minutes. And if I could get the team to mute other people, that'd be awesome. But in the meantime, that can really help. So there's Pomodoro apps out there, and that can be a really great way to focus and really move things forward in your life. This always freaks people out, but I don't have any notifications on my phone. I only go in and check at certain times of the day, because, with dealing with clients, as well as, just, a virtual staff, as well as family, and, all the different notifications, never mind all the social media notifications from ourselves and our clients, my phone would just be buzzing like crazy. And so in the meantime, it's really important. And so some people have been trying this and loving it. But I do ask, for your comfort and for your focus and for your overall mental well-being, to think about turning off your notifications, because that's what social media platforms are doing when they're buzzing you, when you get the little red one, notification, someone sent you a message. It's trying to get you back. It's trying to get your attention to come back. And right now, if you have other things you need to be focusing on to make your life better, that's where it should be, not in these notifications to come back to social media. And again, just leaving your smartphone in another room. If you need to focus, just get it right out of there. So don't even let it be a distraction in the slightest. All right. I love this guy. I just think he looks so happy. This is sort of our, this is the piece where I'd really like to talk into more of sort of this, the mental wellness type pieces. One of the things that, I think he's happy. He's getting the dopamine hit that you get when you're scrolling. And actually, social media can have the same effect on your brain around the dopamine as things like cocaine, gambling, all those other really addictive pieces. And so a lot of people are actually going to social media because not only do they want that hit of feel good, they're also trying to connect with others. Because again, that's a very core part of who we are as humans, is we really want to be there for connection with others. And so for some, they're getting that connection back, and it is filling that need. But for a lot of people, because there's so much noise and so many different ways and different places that people are putting their attention right now, they're not getting those needs filled. So it ends up becoming a really intense cycle where you're going to social media to fill those needs of loneliness and depression. But in the meantime, if you're not getting the right return, it can actually contribute more to those feelings. And so, the doom scroll is real. Next slide, please. Sorry, and then one more here. So in the meantime, there are a lot of studies right now about how things have changed. And again, there's a lot of correlations for this. This is not, solely about social media, but, we have so many people. We have the billions of people that we talked about earlier who have started really using the internet, not just for social networking, but for all parts of their day. And we've also seen these extremely high rates of anxiety and depression, and they've increased by 70% in the last 25 years. So again, we don't want to be a correlation necessarily, but there is going to be a connection between these different pieces. So being aware that, there are these, there's a lot of other factors into this as well. But in the meantime, social media and the way we're communicating right now really is having an impact on people's mental health. Oh, and I love this. There's a really nice, just before I go into this part, with my iPhone, I found it really helpful to set up different focus settings that only allow certain apps on my main screen. For example, at 8 p.m., my wind down focus turns on, and I have podcasts, audiobooks, and meditation. So I'm not tempted to open up my social apps or emails. I love that. That is so smart. And so if you have I think it looks like this is focus settings that are directly in the iPhone. So feel free. And I believe Android has those types of options as well. So really great. Thanks, Brea. Other things that you can be doing as well, and this is, for people who are actually creating content as well. But the big thing is, put out content that's actually connecting with people. Try to start conversations and be there for the responses. Reply to people if they send you something. People are here, they're not just here to like add to your engagement numbers. People are here because they're looking for that connection piece. So thinking about our others, whether they're clients or potential clients, can be really powerful. And especially, if you're an influencer as well and doing this on your personal accounts, creating that contact that actually connects instead of divides people is going to be really powerful for helping others with their mental health. Encourage JOMO, not FOMO, the joy of missing out. Yeah, we have a little issue on the slide there, but in the meantime, the idea is that, go outside, be, giving people instructions, your team, your, if you have teenagers, instead of being like, hey, it's just time to go, kill time on the computer, does it go outside or read or, do some of these other things that are not screen based, and, don't feel like you have to be at everything, because right now everybody's invited to everything in the world. And that can be a little bit exhausting. And then when you're self-aware, when you're now that you're kind of more conscious of these types of things, be aware and, very kindly let others know, like, be like, hey, I've had a mindset shift. Here's how I'm engaging with social media now. And, let people know that they're, this is something, because again, this is a fairly new idea. We've only had several years with social media, but we are in the last couple of years starting to see some of these negative repercussions for mental health. So in the meantime, as we need to educate others who may be being affected and not even conscious of it. So it is something that is an opportunity for you to, to just kind of help others as they're going through this process as well. And then just in general, rethinking your social media behaviors. If you're noticing, and on your phones, there's here's how long you've spent. Mine, I generally spend about 3.5 hours a week, and it's my job. I have to be on there quite a lot, but in the meantime, it's something that, we really want, just be conscious of it, and maybe thinking to yourself, like we said, the goal was 30 minutes a day. That's what they say for social media, which for a lot of us are, people are gasping right now because that's probably going to be difficult to achieve. So it doesn't have to be the whole enchilada. You don't have to, do a drastic change, but slowly changing your social media behaviors and the way that you're engaging with others online can also be something that's a really helpful thing for your own mental health and others. For businesses, we want to, you want to be creating accessible content, making sure it is accessible. Again, avoiding that FOMO. So we're thinking about mental health, but we also want to be making it so that it's inclusive enough. We can actually be engaging, people with different disabilities and such can be, feeling fully included in the internet space. And actually be thinking about it from your business experience, making intentional changes to your policies. So we have a very strong a culture at Ethical Digital of, if you're working after hours, because we have flex hours, it's no problem. People put their time in when they can. But in the meantime, you're not communicating on our Slack channel, or you're scheduling it for the next day. Your emails can be scheduled for later, so that people don't feel like they need to always be on and responding. So we have an intentional discussion about this within our team. And so that's something that can be really powerful coming from leadership in businesses, to be like, hey, we're going to help you manage your social media time as well, because we know that it has an impact on the way that you're feeling and performing. Again, online, prioritize meaningful conversations over transactions. And again, this is just something that's important across the board, but disrupting misinformation is also an important component. And we do have blog posts around that. So I want to make sure to give Rebecca a lot of time to be talking about really cool things that the Mental Health Association is doing. But I wanted to leave you with this thought that, like all technology, social media is neutral, but it's best put to work in the service of building a better world. So that's Simon Mingwaring, and I just love the way that that's phrased. So thank you so much from the research side of this presentation. And again, at the end, we will be sharing a QR code for people if you are interested in diving deeper into this to get a discounted access to our online training, or if you want your team to go through it, we would love to share that as well. But in the meantime, I'd love to introduce, and if we can just take down the presentation there, Vita, I'd love to introduce Rebecca Rackow again, who will be joining us. And well, there we go. And Rebecca, you have been doing some really amazing things with the Canadian Mental Health Association. So I'm going to just stop talking for a little bit and leave it to you to take it away and talk about basically how are we creating safe spaces in this online world.
Well, thank you, Katrina. I'm going to talk about a little bit about like we looked at through your presentation and everything. We've looked very closely at what can I do to maintain my mental health kind of idea about you know, putting your phone away at night, not letting it disrupt your sleep. All of those things are very real, and they're very
Oh yeah, your camera's on. I think Sandra was just putting that note out to everybody.
So yeah, all of those things are very real. One of the things we've looked into also is, you know, yes, we've heard from youth a lot more than we usually do. So my particular job as Director of Advocacy, Research and Public Policy Development is I'm that person in Saskatchewan who will take calls when people call and say, I need help. Then I compile that as data. So people need help with, like, you know, 17 people needed help with, I don't know, their workplace accommodations this month, right? Or something like that. And then I find people to research with me, and we do some extra research on the holes that we're finding. And then from that, we make recommendations and like that, or we create programs around that. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so I'm always the first person in our organization who notices when there's a shift in what our callers are calling about. And we're getting more callers from parents and youth. Youth themselves contacting us via Facebook Messenger, saying, I need help. And a lot of it was surrounded by, or was encased in, things like addictions, things like motivation issues, and not being able to be motivated. Maybe it's depression. How do I know if it's depression? Or sleep disturbances, a lot of anxiety stuff in youth. And so just from our organizational perspective, we realized we needed to create something. And a lot of that seemed to be connected, like that increase, that can be seen very tangibly by our clients, by the people who call in, our callers. And I'm sure it can be seen by other businesses and people who are looking at younger employees and like that as well. So that increase in anxiety is really happening. And anxiety is an unusual and kind of fun little issue, because what happens is it can fracture into a whole bunch of different anxiety disorders. So what you can see are things like OCD, things like phobias being heightened, things like that the FOMO is essentially hugely plays on anxiety and eating disorders, right? Also, you know, looking at, I know, doctors' pictures every day. So we were looking into this, and we did a lot of kind of research, just asking youth questions about their use online and their social media use. And we discovered that while it's really high and it can be very damaging, we're not going to stop that. So while we can take responsibility for our own social media use, it's very difficult to try to convince somebody who's very pleased with their social media presence to like cut that down a bit. So instead, what we've decided to do is to create a safe place that doesn't play so much on those issues. And we decided that our first go around here at Sask Division, I mean, I know across the nation, different CMHAs are doing different things, but here at Sask Division, we started with youth because we noted that that was what we were hearing the most about. So what we developed was the Mentally Safe Minecraft server, or MS squared, as we like to call it. Just kind of a play on the very square cube kind of look of Minecraft. So what we did was we created a space where there was an associated Discord as well. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to take responsibility for a safe place for people to be, because people are going to be gaming, they're going to be talking to each other. How can we create a safe community? And some of the things that that we've done have been changed and moved from the original thought, because we've recognized that some of that stuff needs to be a little bit firmer, some of it needs to be a little looser. So we've evolved and grown. But basically what we've done is we have an associated Discord. So there's a which is social media that I didn't see on the list of people in the chat. But Discord is primarily used by gamers. It's used more and more by businesses as well, and fan bases, and mainly people with a very specific similar interest, right? So we have the MS squared Discord stream, and that has, so you can't get the Minecraft IP address until you've gone through to the Discord and introduced yourself. You don't have to use your real name. You use your gaming name. And our screening process, basically, so that we're not letting people or bots in who who are going to destroy the place and make it unsafe, is tell us your favorite self-care method. And you know, if a person stops and takes time to do that, they're less likely to be just trolling around looking for something to destroy. So once people have done that, they get a welcome message, they get the IP address for the Minecraft server. But on the Discord, we also feel like there's a lot of words and triggers that really don't work well for everybody. And so we've made sure that we've blocked all those words you can't post. You can't post on the Discord with a conversation if you're going to use offensive terms or phrases. So that's something that we struggled a little bit with, because maybe somebody who's struggling is going to be angry and they need, you know, they need to let it out somewhere. But there are a million Discord server places that you can go and use that. Don't do it here because it triggers other people. So we eliminated that. And we also eliminated pictures. You can't post pictures on our Discord. And the reason we did that is we had a group of trolls who just wanted to post offensive pictures, and that was a workaround against our little tiny bit of censorship, so that people aren't being triggered. And so we just, you know, we don't want to post pictures either, because that's that can be a bit of a problem for some folks. We also have peer supporters on there, youth peer supporters, and a counselor on our Discord. They go regularly, they get notifications saying, hey, somebody's asking you for a voice chat, or somebody wants to, is asking you a question or whatever. So then they get a notification, they go on there. So people can ask questions about mental health, about their own mental health. People can arrange to talk directly to our counselor or our peer supporters. And so it's fairly highly moderated. We've offered supports. We also have a Discord conversation that has helplines. So you don't have to be a youth to play it. That's just our big target group, right? But like, anyone can play Minecraft who enjoys it, as long as they are being kind to each other. And so we've had a lot of really open conversations, a lot of fun little games, just even on the Discord. But then when they play Minecraft, there's like 3 different worlds. You can do mini games, you can do creative. I mean, it's just an open world, right? So we have a creative world and we have a survival world. And we encourage people to work together in the survival world to resolve, you know, to get further ahead or to build a big building or something like that. And they do. And so that creates kind of a community out of folks who would never have necessarily even met. So we know that a lot of folks feel like they're alone, even though they're in their home communities, if that makes sense. That's one of those things, that loneliness thing can happen if you're like the target in your community of being bullied, or you're you don't feel like you're included, you don't have the same interests, you're from a small place and everybody's athletic and you're not, or like that. But if you go online, you can build online communities that fill that belonging piece, and that belonging piece is a very important part of mental health. So we wanted to make sure that there's a community that people can go to if they're into gaming, if they're into Minecraft, even if they're not into Minecraft, but they're into gaming, you can kind of use the Discord and talk while you're playing anything. It's just that you have the option. So in the corner of the screen in the Minecraft worlds, every 10 minutes, there's a mental health tip reminding people to take a break. You know, remember that your screen time is possibly keeping you away from the world. Go call someone that you know and have a conversation, then come back to us, that sort of thing. It's little mental health tips that actually help people remember, because you're into it and you're involved, and you can spend like several hours. You can spend days playing Minecraft and the days just go by, right? If that's your inclination. So just little reminders like that. In the game, there's helplines. So but it's not meant just for folks who already have mental health struggles. That's one kind of target, but the other is just for folks who don't want to be negatively impacted by social media and impacted by the way that by some of the things that can be detrimental to mental health. So that is the crux of the program. But what we've learned is that communities do grow online, and I think they're real communities. There's a lot of genuine care for people who are struggling. Someone admits that they had a really rough day, or that they're arguing with their parents. And, 5 or 6 people will come up and say like, hey, that's happened to me too. I understand. Want to talk about it? Or do you want to voice chat or like that? And so people have that opportunity to take care of each other. So instead of just going to our counselor, just going to our peer supporters, they're going to each other. They're building a community. And so that's kind of what we were looking for, so that you have a safe place and you have a place where people can feel that sense of belonging. And I think that therein lies kind of the gift of social media in amongst all of the difficulties. And I think you can apply that to things other than gaming and target populations other than youth. So if you're looking at how to make your workplace, structured around positive social media, you can use those same kind of principles of having support or being able to connect with people who are in the same project and that sort of thing, and instituting some team building and like that. So you can kind of do those things outside of just that youth gaming, and therein lies the pilot that was the youth programming. So that's really what I have to say about that. Yeah. If there's anyone who wants to ask anything about that and how it works and what we're doing, how it's doing, that'd be great.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And for me, I find that really interesting. Again, as a person running a business, some of the things that I'm taking away from, this example is really this idea of community, of setting guidelines, of reminding people, hey, connect with each other. We just actually on Monday had a conversation with our team. Canadian summers are short. If you want to go out for a bike ride during the day, just make up the time later, no problem. There's, it actually really, again, we have a highly efficient group. But those just those reminders that we're human beings as well, not sort of attached to our cyborg world. But yeah, so those are some of the takeaways I'm taking away from my workplace, which I really appreciate. But it's really something that I think all of us can be thinking about in terms of also, and our teenagers, as you mentioned, are highly affected by a lot of this, where they are developmentally too, as well as, there's a lot of us on this call who remember a time without internet and without social media. And there's a whole group of people who have no frame of reference outside of that. They don't know what it's like to live without a lot of the judgment or the kind of constantly comparing yourself to others based on what you're seeing from around the world, and unrealistic kind of views of others too. So in the meantime, thank you. I think that's just such a valuable information. So we've got 10 minutes for people to ask questions. We have a mental health professional here. Would love to hear what your burning questions are around, maybe the mental health and the social media or internal communications on your teams. Maybe just questions, for yourself or for your family in terms of like, hey, what's something that I should be thinking about when it comes to social media, that sort of thing. So we're here for questions. And I'm not afraid to be awkward and wait till somebody asks one. Oh, there's somebody. We got Atik in the corner there. Yeah, go ahead, Atik.
Thank you so much for doing this presentation. Really appreciate that. I am a single person, a consultant. So I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn and I spend a lot of my time on Twitter. So I understand how, the FOMO is at present.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the point about making it more inviting rather than pressuring people in. Do you offer some kind of education? I mean, I would love to participate in some kind of learning so I can make my posts a lot more. I want to make them informational, but I don't want to make them in such a way that they're, awkward like that, take action, nothing. I don't want to do any of that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. So yes, absolutely. We do. We have a couple of versions of the training. So we could do it as a workshop, or we also have an online version. So this actually might be a good time, Vita, if you want to just put up just for a moment, the QR code. We'll also email this out to everybody too. But this is just an opportunity to access our online training for free. And so it's your lucky day, Atik. We have it and it's yours for free. For us, like our goal is we want people to be educated about this. We want people to understand it because this is a very huge issue that's not really being talked about, and it will be in the next few years. But in the meantime, the more we can be educating people, the more we're reaching our goals. So in the meantime, we would love for you to try this training for free. Let us know if you feel like you're coming out of it with those skills. That's our goal, that you have a lot of personal introspection as well as some practical things that you can be putting in place in your life. And if you're creating posts, what you can be doing with those posts as well. And I swear, I don't know Atik. So in the meantime, thank you. You just really played into that. I love it. And we'll be emailing everybody on the call that link as well. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Oh, we're getting some in the chat box, which I love. So I'm going to go. Oh, sorry. I think I heard someone speak up. Let's go with that one first.
No, I saw one in the chat here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I'll just read this first one here from Kevin Tidalgo. Culturally, I was brought up with the idea that mental health can be overcome and medication is a hoax. So it wasn't part of the way you grew up. How can you approach the conversation with your parents or friends who don't believe in getting help? So I think I'll put this one over to Rebecca.
Very good question. That's a very difficult task. And we've been looking at the stigma of mental health issues and the difficulties that people are having, and how historically here and all over the world, it's been considered shameful or like weak or or a hoax, right? Why don't you just get over that thing? And we've been working really hard at CMHA all across the nation to try to bust down that stigma. But we also know that a lot of folks from other places still like hold on to that. So I know that that's not the case in culturally everywhere, or even in cultures within Canada. So one of the things that, so this is an actual big problem that's huge, but I think that one of the best ways to break down some of that is education. So looking at what kind of education would your parents or your friends like really trust, and then going through that way to be able to educate people on the things that actually, you know, are difficult and people do struggle with. So so then also being very oftentimes you can go to a doctor, or you can go to to a community organization and take a look at that and try to help without having to broach that with other people as well. You can oftentimes do a little bit of get some tools and do some things. I'm not suggesting, you know, go around behind your parents' back and take copious amounts of psychotropic medication. That's not what I'm suggesting. That's the opposite. But I do think that there are like counseling type tools, CBT tools and stuff like that that you can get that aren't you don't need another person's permission to do that. You can just learn some tools, learn some skills, and help work on yourself as well. I hope that answers the question. That's a very difficult thing that we've been working on really hard to try to overcome.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Super appreciated. And I think we have time for this one last question. For communities where people can rely on each other, couldn't it be a concern that people may say the wrong thing, which may end up being a trigger? And, you know, this is something we deal with a lot too, because we create a lot of, you know, inclusive content. That's our goal, is to, you know, to try not to trigger people, to try to educate them, inspire them, that sort of thing. But occasionally you'll put something out and you don't know, you know, what you don't know, that this might be insulting to somebody. So for me, it's actually kind of less like there's a few obvious things that could be triggers for people that, you know, you probably want to skirt around and probably put some guidelines in place for those communities to say, hey, we don't talk about these types of things. But in the meantime, there's the other side, you know, where, you know, we are in a changing world where, you know, things that might have been fine even 2 months ago to say are tricky now. So it's sometimes hard just to know because you're not up on that particular news. I remember, this is just a terrible story, but, you know, for me, for the longest time, I had in my Twitter biography, I said I was a Saskatchewan gypsy. And I didn't know that gypsy was not a culturally appropriate term. You know, for me, it was a very beautiful term. It was sort of a free spirit type of idea, but I didn't realize a lot of the cultural and, you know, background and such. So I felt terrible for years. You know, I'd kind of had that out there in the meantime, contrary to a lot of what I'm trying to accomplish. So it happens to everybody, even people who are studying this world, even people who have the very best of intentions. The big thing for me that I would say out of that is, you know, just the ability to apologize and open the conversation, because I always think, you know, a light is the best thing that can happen to any issue, you know, shine a light on it, let people know it's an issue, and then, you know, it doesn't have as much, you know, power in the future when it as secrets do. So in the meantime, if it's out there, just be like, hey, I'm sorry. You know, I actually didn't mean to offend you. You know, make a decision. Is this something that, you know, you want to change in yourself? Maybe it's using a term like crazy or something. A lot, you know, that's a term a lot of people are, you know, trying to avoid these days, you know, so you might want to consciously try to, you know, change those things within yourself. But the big thing is open a dialogue with that person and, you know, and hopefully try to heal that. So that's how we really approach our community building online, is if there is something where we inadvertently stepped on someone's toes, or, hurt them or triggered them, that's exact opposite what we want to do, but we just make sure to address it, try to make that person feel heard, make some decisions on our side personally and organizationally about how we want to be approaching that going forward, make those changes if appropriate, and then, and there you go. So in the meantime, don't feel bad. Things happen all the time. People everywhere are, stepping over words right now. But in the meantime, the biggest thing is just learning how to apologize gracefully and make sure that person is heard, and then deciding how you want to go forward. So that would be my answer. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that, Rebecca?
Oh, I was just thinking pretty much the same thing. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. But then you just being open to being educated or asking questions and letting that person know that you're actually open to changing what you've said can go a long way.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. Really wanted to do a giant thank you to Rebecca. Really appreciate you coming here today and lending your experiences and some of the things you've done for Safe Spaces. The Ethical Digital team will be on this call for a little bit longer. So if you have any questions that you want to talk about specifically around the training or about how you can be engaging your team to talk about these types of conversations, we're more than happy to have those types of conversations with you. Again, we're here. We want to see a change in the trajectory of the internet. And so thank you everybody for joining us, and let's all work together to educate the world. Thank you very much.